Chapter 35, Chapter 32, The Goodbye. Chapter 32, The Goodbye.
Soon, we will leave you, child. No, don't cry. It is our way, the way of our people, the Warren. We are a solitary people, and you must learn to live alone. You are strong. We have already taught you how to survive, and so you will. But before then, there are things you must know about the Warren, for we are different from other people. They are many, and we are few. This is the way it always has been, and this is the way it always will be. Now listen, and I will tell you the secrets of our people, the laws that are ours, and ours alone.
Kat woke up. The first rays of the sunrise were shining through the window. She had forgotten to close the curtains before turning in again, and the light had managed to score a direct hit on her left eye. Muttering curses, she fell out of her bed and bounced twice before dragging herself to the feet and fixing the problem. There was no point in trying to go back to sleep now. Once she had woken up, she usually stayed that way. Stretching and yawning, she pulled a robe on over her nightshirt and opened the door, wanting to hit the communal shower on the girls' floor before Nina Ortiz woke up. Still groggy, she almost failed to notice the envelope pinned to the wall outside of her room with her name on it, in Ryu's handwriting. For a moment, she almost kept walking anyways, before giving in and plucking it off the wall, hoping he had remembered to use small words and short sentences. She had never actually told any of the others that she could barely read. It wasn't exactly something she was proud of, in the modern age, but she was pretty sure that most of them had figured it out by now without needing to be told. Kat. Meet me up top. Bring your staff. Ryu.
Well,
she muttered to herself, suddenly feeling better about a lot of things.
That's my kind of letter, all right.
Turning around, she closed the door behind her and got dressed. Though she didn't bother with her chain mail, this would only be a spar, rather than a serious fight, even if they were using their weapons. She did, however, take the time to close her extensive collection of bracers around forearms, calves, waist, and neck. Picking up her battle staff, she left her room and walked up the flight of stairs at the end of the hall, onto the roof.
Hey there,
Ryu called over to her as she emerged. He was sitting on the edge of the roof, clad similarly to her, in pants and undershirt rather than his plate mail, though the long sword strapped to his back was still more than enough to clue anybody in as to his line of work. He wasn't quite smiling, but he wasn't frowning either, and the glint in his green eyes spoke louder than words about what he was thinking, the same as her. A pot of coffee steamed next to him, atop a tray with 2 mugs, though neither was filled yet.
You're even earlier than I thought you would be. Had some trouble sleeping,
she replied, walking towards him before stopping half the roof away.
Besides, you should talk. This is the second day in a row you've been up before me.
She was about to ask if he had had some trouble sleeping himself, but managed to bite it back just in time. No matter how cranky she was with him, he had trusted her with the knowledge of his nightmares born from Barberry's voice, and to joke about that would be a betrayal of that trust.
Didn't want to keep you waiting,
he shot back, standing as well and walking forward.
You want to have our coffee before or after? Like you have to ask.
She teased him, spinning her battle staff.
Then again, maybe you do. Getting old on me already? Not gonna be able to wake up all the way and do your best without a little jolt first. Just for that, I ought to chug the whole pot and make you get another,
he joked back, drawing his sword.
But if you're gonna put it that way.
Without another word, he immediately moved in, feinting for her shoulder before making his actual swing a little lower. Grinning, she blocked it with her staff and forced him back, turning her battle staff to bring the other end down towards his head, and he stepped aside with a smirk of his own before slicing at her ankles. It was the dance of blood, a dance they were more than familiar with, both in general and against each other. They had fought for their lives, all their lives, which was what had led them into this line of work. At some point for both of them, it had become thrilling rather than frightening, something to be enjoyed while it lasted, instead of feared for the possibility of death. It wasn't as simple as sadism, or even masochism. A one-sided fight, either way, killed the buzz. It was only when it was good, when both sides were evenly matched, that it made their blood boil and their thoughts sizzle. It wasn't completely in earnest, of course. They both had enough control over their weapons that neither was going to kill each other unless they tried. They had only gone all out once, the very first time, when they had gone head-to-head on Fight Night in the Corsair Coliseum as part of the demonic manager's plot. Even then, they had still been fighting for fun, rather than to kill. And it had been fun, which was one of the reasons she had chosen to tag along with him once it was all said and done, putting an end to her life as a stray and finding a family for the first real time in her life. They had sparred every now and then since, about once a week at first, though it had been nearly a month since the last time. For some reason, it probably had something to do with how serious things had gotten. Ever since Ran's mother had been taken, none of them had even been able to pretend they were just doing it for the money and the adventure. It was personal now, and that had affected them all. This was the first time all month she had been able to put it out of her mind and just enjoy the moment, and it made her realize how much she had missed sparring with Ryu. In the end, she managed to win this time, which didn't surprise her. They were evenly matched enough that in a straight-up physical confrontation, it was more or less anybody's guess. After about 10 minutes, both of them sweating and bleeding, though the latter only slightly, she managed to finally sweep him off his feet. He hit the floor hard, on his back, and before he could move, she managed to get a foot on the wrist of his sword hand and the tip of her battle staff against his throat. Their eyes met, and once she saw acknowledgement in his, she stepped away.
Good one,
he said, still smiling, as he got back to his feet.
Been a while. I was about to say,
she agreed, inclining her head towards the tray.
Coffee. Let's hope it's still hot.
He nodded, and they walked over, taking turns pouring their own mugs.
I think it's safe to say winter has arrived. You had better not be getting soft on me,
she teased him, ruffling his hair.
You've been up north this time of year, same as me. They've probably got snow waist deep in northern windy right now. Orion winters are nothing. Not as long as our coffee's still hot, they're not,
he shot back.
Point.
She took a sip of hers and smiled. It wasn't exactly burning, but it was still warm enough to be enjoyable.
Good enough. This was a good idea. I thought it might be,
he agreed, sitting on the edge of the roof, and she joined him without hesitating, though she stifled the urge to lean against his side. As much as she would have liked to, they were pushing it already by being up here alone. That was why they hadn't sparred much recently, she suddenly remembered, and had to fight to keep her face calm. Even if she and Ryu and Nina all knew there would be nothing more just yet, it still hurt her best friend on an irrational level, and eventually they'd both realized that.
How long do you think it'll be before the others wake up?
She asked, thinking quickly.
Was anybody else up already? Just Nero, when I checked, and that was pretty much unavoidable,
Ryu told her.
Everybody in town says he naps a lot, but I've certainly never been able to catch him sleeping. Good point,
she admitted.
Let me guess, he already had this pot brewing too. And another one for backup, which is why he didn't mind me bringing this one up here.
He nodded.
Say what you will about Nero, but he takes care of this place. Takes care of us, you mean,
she joked.
You know he actually has people do our laundry, when we're out on jobs. Some of the townsfolk. I wondered about that,
he admitted.
How'd you find out? Asked him after the first time I came back and found all my bras washed, she explained. I even managed to stop myself from hitting him until he had a chance to explain himself, which turned out to be for the best. Yeah, probably,
Ryu said dryly.
Maybe I should suggest we add Butler to his list of titles just to see what he says. I wouldn't, unless you actually want to see that, just to screw with your head, she advised him. He spent some time as an actor, when he was younger. He's actually pretty good at it. You know, I just might, but not until we've got all this cleared up,
he replied, humor fading from his voice.
This really isn't the time for screwing around much. Don't think we'd appreciate it the way we normally would. Things have been taking a turn for the grim lately,
she agreed, spirits falling a little again as she remembered how close they had come to actually going at it, in a way that was the exact opposite of fun, just the other day. Taking a sip of coffee to give herself time to think, she quickly remembered why she didn't do so very often. Thinking hurt, not in the physical sense, but in the irritation and discomfort of not being able to turn questions into answers the way most other people could. After a moment, however, she realized at least one thing.
You didn't ask me up here just to spar, did you? Not entirely, he admitted. Don't get me wrong, I really did want to, and it really was fun. But that wasn't all. Crap.
She sighed, glancing downward.
I should have known. It's all right, if you don't want to,
he said, a little too quickly, without looking at her.
I'm not trying to pressure you or anything. I just...
He trailed off.
I know,
she replied quietly, still staring down at the houses below. The early risers were already up, and the first signs of life were clearly visible, as the residents of the new town without a name began their day.
It's a problem. I should have talked to you, or somebody, about it already, but...
She took a deep breath, and decided to go with what had always worked for her before. Full speed ahead, and dim her doubts.
Alright. First things first. I'm not crushing on Tika, alright? That's one thing that isn't happening here. I'm glad to hear it,
Ryu told her, and she could tell by the sound of his voice that he believed her.
I mean, I was pretty sure about that much already, but I'm still happy to actually hear you say it. You know. Yeah.
She glanced at him, and this time he met her eyes.
I know. I'll admit, if I hadn't met you first, it might have happened. Maybe. He does seem like he's my type, and he's almost as good looking as you are. Now you're just flattering me,
he said dryly.
You would prefer I told you looked like something Rand scraped off the bottom of his boot.
She shot back in the same tone before continuing.
Like I said, could have happened, under other circumstances. But I just met the guy, for crying out loud. And you and me.
She paused, trying to figure out a good way to phrase it, one that she wouldn't mind getting out to Nina, even if her best friend would likely never hear about it.
Well, we've known each other for what, nearly half a year now? And it really didn't take us long. Half a year,
Ryu said thoughtfully, glancing down at the town again.
Is that really all it's been? It seems like so much more than that. I know, right?
She agreed, doing the same.
It's like all the time I spent before I met any of you seems to have gone so fast, and then after. So slow. But in a good way. You, and Rand, and Nina and Sten and all the rest. You're already more like family than.
She caught herself just in time to avoid finishing that sentence, though she knew Ryu would probably guess what she was going to say, and flushed. She didn't feel embarrassed often, but that just made the rare occasions burn all the more.
Anyway. What I'm saying is. That's all one-sided. On his part. That much was kind of obvious,
Ryu said, and though there was still a little anger in his voice, it was much more reduced than it had been the previous day, which hardened her.
I'm hoping that doesn't get too out of hand. The guy's definitely the kind who falls in love twice a month, and maybe once he figures out you're not interested, he'll move on. He hit on Nina and Dee's both, even if he wasn't exactly falling all over them. Why am I not surprised by this?
She rolled her eyes, fighting down a surge of discomfort at his guess. As much as she hoped he was right, the opposite was far more likely, and the fact that he had no idea why just made it all the more troublesome. It was that, more than anything, that was behind her decision to own up.
Anyways, if that was all there was to it, this wouldn't be a problem. But there's something else. I thought so,
Ryu said quietly.
But I don't know what it is. You wouldn't,
she said calmly.
Nobody else does, outside of the clan. I never thought it would actually be important, myself. Tika's the only actual member of my own clan I've ever met, aside from my parents. Those freaks at the Wildcat Cafe don't count, since they got thrown out, so I wasn't worried about them, but this. Is that what this is about?
Ryu asked, eyes widening suddenly.
Clan law. You've got it.
She nodded. The 3 laws that governed the world were separate legal systems, divided based on jurisdiction. First was world law, decided and enforced by the Council of Nations and Clans who convened in the undersea city-state of Prima. Second was national law, which each separate government applied to its own territory. Third and last was clan law, the rules and regulations a sentient species governed its own kind by. In the case of the Warren clan, it was a secret that only their clan was supposed to know. Revealing it to others wasn't strictly forbidden, but it was frowned upon.
I'm not supposed to talk about it to people from other clans, but I want to. It's your decision, Kat,
Ryu said, taking her hand in his.
I understand, now. If you want to tell me, or if you don't. I do,
she told him, quietly but firmly. Reaching around behind her, she grabbed the coffee pot and refilled both of their mugs before continuing.
You guys. Like I said, you're my family. It's hard, but I want to.
Taking another deep breath, she kept talking.
It's like this. You know how there aren't very many of us, right? The Warren clan. I'd be surprised if there were more than 100 of us, all over the world. If we weren't so hard to kill, we'd probably be extinct, and the way we take care of our kids doesn't exactly help. You told me about that once,
Ryu recalled, shaking his head slowly.
I still say that's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard of, and I've been hanging out with Bao all my life. I mean, you turned out great, but...
He trailed off.
But a lot of other Warren kids might not have been so lucky.
Kat finished for him, thinking back to the day her parents had abandoned her, almost as soon as she had been able to walk. She couldn't remember their faces now, and every day, the sound of their voices faded a little more. For a while, she had wondered if they would have done it clan law hadn't forced them to, but eventually she had stopped, deciding she didn't want to know.
Yeah, I know. But if you think that's stupid, I've got some bad news for you. It gets worse.
Ryu demanded incredulously.
Afraid so.
She shook her head.
Here's the thing. World law says we can't marry any other clans except humans, on account of how they're the only ones that'll result in Warren kids instead of half-seas. Just like any other clan.
She kept her voice level, trying not to think about the tragedies they'd all recently endured because of the Dragon Clan and Wing clans interbreeding a millennium ago.
So for us, it's humans or other Warrens. For obvious reasons, the former happens more often than the latter, which is probably the only thing keeping our numbers on the rise, or at least breaking even. Why do I get the feeling that I'm really not going to like this?
Ryu growled, hand tightening around hers.
Because you can smell this kind of thing coming from a mile away,
she told him, trying and failing to put the appropriate amount of sarcasm into it. The unfortunate truth was, there simply wasn't anything even remotely funny about the situation.
The thing is, normally, we don't normally get along with other people. The way I hear it, by my clan's standards, I'm as warm and fuzzy as Jean is to normal folks. So a lot of the time, Warren clansmen just avoid anything permanent if they've got any choice in the matter. Which doesn't exactly lead itself towards keeping our numbers up. Which is where clan law comes in. Oh, no.
Ryu's eyes narrowed in anger.
You are not telling me what I think you are. Afraid so,
she said flatly.
Whenever two Warren clansmen of opposite genders meet, unless one or both of them is already involved with a human, clan law dictates that they do so with each other as soon as possible. As in, marriage.
Ryu made several anatomical and scatological comments.
Yeah, pretty much, she agreed. I'd have told you guys before, but I didn't know Tika would be a Warren clansman. And we didn't know it would be important, so we didn't tell you until it was too late,
Ryu added glumly.
Shit. This is a real mess.
They were both silent for a few moments, staring out over the town, and Kat once again had to fight not to lean against him. Eventually, he spoke again.
What do you mean by, involved? How specific is that? We don't have to actually have a kid on the way,
she told him, somehow managing to keep a straight face.
But we would have to be, well, trying. That's out, then.
He shook his head.
Nina aside, if and when we do, it's not going to be because of some stupid law. Yeah,
she agreed quickly, wanting to move past that topic. It wasn't making her blush, but it was still a little touchy, especially when she wondered how far they'd have gone by now if the situation had been less complicated between them and Nina.
You know Tika better than I do. Is he likely to make an issue of this? Normally.
Ryu shook his head.
I'd say no. He's a pretty easygoing guy, and most of them time his flirting seems to just be trying his luck. But the way he was acting around you... That's different. I really don't know. I was afraid of that.
She sighed.
Kind of hoped that if he figured out I wasn't interested, he'd agree to keep this under wraps. What the rest of the clan doesn't know won't hurt us, and all that. But if he wants it to happen... Just for the sake of curiosity, what happens if we do go with that, and then you're found out?
Ryu asked cautiously.
Death sentence,
she told him bluntly.
For me and him. Probably not going to happen, then,
he grumbled.
Alright, there's only one way out of this, then. It's going to suck, but that'll happen sometimes. We're going to have to act like we're a couple around the renegades from now on, whenever we work with them. Additional motivation to bring down Evray and conclude our business with them as fast as possible, I guess. I just hope Nina understands. I know you hate lying, but it'll at least have some basis in fact, and right now we don't really have a lot of options. I didn't want to ask,
Kat confessed, fighting down a warm glow at the thought.
Either you or her. Not just because I hate lying, either, or because I suck at it. Because it felt too much like asking you to choose. And I'm not ready for that,
Ryu admitted quietly.
I should be, and I'm sorry, but I'm not. This, though. You didn't ask for this. It's not your fault, and we're not going to let you take the fall for it, any of us. We'll have to tell the others, though. Not just Nina, the rest of them will notice something's up if we start acting different, and that might ruin it. But for her sake, most of all, I think you had better be the one to tell them. I wanted to,
she said, just as softly.
I really did. But I just couldn't. Now, though. Now, I think I can.
She gave him a smile.
Thanks.
Anytime, he promised, turning to look her in the eye again and smiling in the same calm, but not cocky, way that she had always liked.
No matter what happens, Cat. I'll always be there for you. I promise. I know,
she agreed, and now it was her turn to tighten her hand around his.
That's why I can't. You know. I know,
he repeated somberly, though his smile remained.
Ready to go down and see how the others are doing? Yeah.
She nodded.
I'll tell them after breakfast, okay? We can have a meeting and everything before we head over to see if Smith really did make it back all on her own.
Her eyes widened suddenly, as a thought struck her.
Crap, Smith. Will she give it away? Pretty sure we never talked about that sort of thing with her,
Ryu reminded her.
The way I remember it, we were all pretty careful about what we said whenever she was around. I know I was, especially about being Dragon Clan, and I know for sure she doesn't know that. As far as she, or any of them know, I'm just a regular human. So long as we all make sure not to let that, or anything else, out, she'll just be one more guy we have to fool. Good.
She relaxed.
Alright, I'm gonna see if the shower's occupied. Sounds like a good idea.
He nodded.
See you in a few.
To her delight, it turned out that both Nina and Dees were still asleep, and she was able to take her shower uninterrupted before returning to her room and dressing again. This time, she wore her chainmail over her top, though she left the enchanted hood back. As effective as it was, she couldn't shake the nagging thought that it made her look ridiculous. There was no real need to wear the armor in town, but they'd be setting off soon, and she wanted to be ready to go when Ryu gave the word. She spent the next half an hour doing some basic exercises, as the rest of the team stumbled, slouched and slipped their way downstairs and into wakefulness. Once Dees joined them, they made their way over to the Rivobs, where the couple once again insisted on giving them their breakfast free of charge, no matter how strenuously Ryu and Rand protested. Kat had her theories about why they did that, ones she had shared with Sten to make sure she wasn't just being a bonehead again, and he had agreed, but it never quite felt like the time to share that with either of them. Once they had eaten, they went back home for the meeting, which Ryu opened up as usual before turning it over to her. She explained the situation, only hesitating for a moment. Ryu's awareness of the problem, and his trust in her, were enough to overcome the doubt she had had about telling anybody before. As she talked, their faces changed from polite neutrality and dry amusement to confusion, anger, and disgust. By the time she was done, nobody looked happy, not even Jean.
Okay, then.
Sten coughed once she had finished.
Speaking as a representative of the Highlander clan, which is pretty ass backwards in a lot of ways. That is the stupidest excuse for a law I have ever heard, and I used to serve under a guy who the grunts used to say had literal shit for brains. It is ridiculous, is what it is, mon ami,
Jean told him, shaking his head sadly.
To make love a thing of obligation is almost beyond belief. Believe it,
she told him, though she was slightly pleased that even he was taking this seriously.
It sucks, but it's real. Then you're right, of course,
Nina said solemnly, face blank, and that hurt. She could tell by now when the princess was concealing her emotions in favor of pure practicality, and this was one of the worst cases she had ever seen.
We can't allow that to happen. If acting as if you and Ryu were already a couple is the only way to ensure that without gambling on Tiga's choices, then that's the way it'll have to be. Just.
She faltered for a moment before continuing.
Don't go too over the top, alright? If you act lovey-dovey, they'll get suspicious. We know,
Kat told her, not even commenting on the lovey-dovey part.
Thanks, Nina. For understanding. This probably isn't going to be much fun for you. It won't be,
she agreed bluntly, shaking her head.
But it wasn't your idea, either of you, and it's too late to back out of this deal now. Besides, honestly speaking, we need them. If this is the price for that, so be it. You're all being a lot more cool about it than I would be, that's for sure.
Bao chuckled lightly, though he was giving Ryu a meaningful glance. One cat had the feeling was saying something to Ryu that only he would understand.
Sheesh. This is a real mess. That's what I said,
Ryu agreed, looking glum again.
Why is it that, even though we're winning every fight we're in and making more money in a few months than we expected to make all year, I still feel like everything keeps getting worse and worse for us? Would you prefer losing our fights?
Dees pointed out.
Look, I can't say I saw this coming in particular, but this is basically the way it goes. Things are going to keep getting worse and worse, for all of us, until we finish this. In every way we can imagine, and probably some we can't. The only way we're going to get clear is to get out.
Well, Kat muttered, torn between wanting to punch the snake sorceress and thank her, though of course neither was something she'd actually do. They had been friends when she had pretended to be human, and to a certain extent they still were, but after revealing herself and joining up, Dee's just confused her.
That's encouraging. If you want encouragement, you joined up with the wrong group,
Sten commented.
If that's what we have to do, then that's all there is to it, then.
Ryu put his hands flat on the table, and everybody turned to look at him.
I'm sick of this destiny bullshit. It's already taken far too much from us, from all of us. I want out, as quickly as possible. And if that includes payback against those bastards, so much the better. So let's go see if little Miss Smith can actually back up that talk of hers, and then find out exactly what she and Lee have planned, hey. Normally, I'm in favor of days off every now and then, but you're right when it comes to this situation.
Bao nodded grimly.
The only way out's straight ahead. My favorite way of doing things anyways,
Kat cracked, grinning, though she knew it wasn't in her eyes.
No holds barred, and hope for the best. And if the best doesn't happen, we make it happen anyways,
Nina added.
Well then. Shall we? Yeah.
She met her best friend's eyes, and saw a multitude of emotions in them, pain and sorrow and despair, from everything that had happened to her before now just as much as what was going on at the moment. But there was acceptance, there was an understanding, and that was why they were still best friends, despite having nothing in the world in common.
Let's.
Another spell from Jean took them back to Scotland, on the other side of the world. Its distance made even the great bird impractical, which was a pity. No matter how many times they did it, Kat would always love flying, high above the world. But business took precedence over pleasure, now of all times, and in an instant they were there, right outside the canyon. She and Rand moved the boulder again before walking around, and found the gate already rising, Gaston walking over with a wave and a grin.
Hey, guys.
He called.
We were wondering when you would get in. Expecting us, were you?
She shouted back.
I take it that means little Miss Smith managed to find her way here after all. Came in right around sunrise, wrung out like a washcloth and pissed as hell about something, but she didn't say what,
Gaston said, smirking.
I don't know what you guys did to her, but I kind of wish I could have seen it. She's sleeping it off right now, but she had a chat with Tika first, so our funding issues are all straightened out. We were just waiting for you guys to get back here before we started planning the next stage of our operations. Glad to hear it.
Ryu nodded professionally, anger back under the surface again.
The sooner we take him down, the better, right? Demonstrate.
Gaston turned around and began yelling at the buildings again, prompting the rest of his crew to begin bursting out of doors and climbing out of windows like the last time.
You know, I used to think our crew was pretty wild, but these guys put us to shame,
Bao commented dryly as Chip jumped off a roof and rolled to his feet upon landing.
Not unexpected, with a name like the Renegades, Mon Ami,
Jean pointed out.
We chose it for a reason,
Gaston agreed, chuckling.
Boss is in the barn again. He'll be glad to see you're back. Especially you, Sean. I'll bet.
She rolled her eyes, resisting the urge to glance at Ryu. He didn't need her cue to know to respond to that.
Just as long as he doesn't get too glad,
he replied, keeping his smile on, though his eyes were no longer friendly.
Oh.
Gaston looked from one of them to the other, and his eyes widened.
Oh. That's how it is, hey? Man, why didn't you say so? Didn't seem polite to make a point of it, when we were getting along so well otherwise,
Ryu said, still calm.
We kind of hoped it would pass. Hate to break it to you guys, but that's not the way the boss works.
Gaston grimaced.
At all. Give him a couple weeks, and maybe he'll fall for somebody else, but until then he's gonna be driving himself up the walls thinking about you, Sean. Just as long as he know how to keep it professional.
She shrugged with more nonchalance than she felt. Acting wasn't really her strong point, but she knew how to keep up a calm facade at least.
That's what's important. Cat.
Tika threw the door of the bar open, staring out at them, and just like when she had first saw him, her mind immediately froze under the conflicting emotions. Despite what she had told Ryu, there was something inherently attractive about Tika, and there was only so much she could do to keep herself from reacting to that.
Thought I heard your voice. You came back to me.
Dees muttered something in some incomprehensible foreign language under her breath.
Yeah, pretty much,
Gaston agreed, just as quietly.
Hey, Lee.
Ryu stepped between them as he approached, holding out a hand.
Heard Smith made it back okay. Yeah, she did,
Tiga said after a moment, pausing in his path with a blank look on his face before finally shaking Ryu's hand again.
Thanks, by the way, for taking care of that. We got the issue of funding all squared away before she conked out, so that's all taken care of. Just need a day or two more to buy everything we'll need, and then we'll be ready to get to work.
Glancing at Kat again, he turned back towards the barn.
Come on in so we can go over that, hey? Little P, get the drinks. I'll pass this time, thank you,
Nina told the kid quietly.
Ale isn't my thing. I as well, mon ami,
Jean agreed quickly, and Spar nodded.
Came prepared this time, actually.
Little P assured them as they walked in, crossing to the keg and picked up a bottle that had been lying next to it.
The boss picked up some red wine out of Sima from a nearby town last night. Seemed polite, you know? What about you, Chan? Hey.
Kat blinked, surprised, before shaking her head vehemently.
No, thanks. I'll take ale any day. My kind of girl.
Tiga chuckled, winking, and she struggled to control her automatic reaction. Despite what she had told Ryu, and everything else she knew, he was even better looking than their own leader, in a roguish way that she had always liked. Once they'd all sat down, however, his eyes took on a glint that was all business, and he pointed at a map on the table.
Alright, here's how it goes. Everybody knows what the final target is. Evray. No matter how you slice it, it's gotta go, ideally as spectacularly as possible. Sounds like there's a but coming on,
Bao predicted dryly.
Pretty sharp.
Tiga nodded as Little P started passing out the mugs and wine glasses.
I like that. The fact of the matter is, we don't have enough information. Clarice went in to get some more, and that's helped, but even before she did, she warned us that that wouldn't be enough, and it turned out she was right. As usual. Which means we need to get it from another source. Problem is, that's not as easy as it sounds. I don't suppose it would be,
Nina agreed.
I doubt the lower-ranking demons would know much, if anything, about Evray. None of the ones we've encountered that weren't in the upper ranks seemed like they would. And as for the Church of Saint Eva, just snatching random priests off the streets is about as bad an idea as it gets. Most of them are probably just being duped, just as much as their followers, and it would attract too much attention to do it over and over until we got lucky, professional standards aside. Right again.
Tiga tapped at a point on the map, south of Kotland, down in the wasteland of Skenda.
Fortunately for us, we've managed to find a solution to that. A target we know is dirty. If you head as far south as you can from here, into the wasteland of Skenda, at the end of the land is a recruitment camp for the Church of Saint Eva. Bando. It's basically where prospective citizens of Evray make a pilgrimage to, in order to prove their devotion. The rumor goes that if your faith is strong enough to carry you through Skenda in one piece, you'll be found worthy. Bando.
Ren snapped his fingers, scowling.
That's where that shitty paladin tried to tell us my mother had gone. Your mom.
Mick said sympathetically.
Let me guess. The church made her disappear conveniently? Same thing happened to my girlfriend. I believed in Saint Eva until then, but after that happened.
He trailed off, lowering his head.
Me, Bao and Ryu used to follow the church ourselves,
Kat told him sympathetically.
We weren't really fanatics about it, but we believed, you know? We even know an honest paladin we used to be on good terms with. Worked together with him a couple times. But after Ran's mother disappeared. Well, it wasn't too hard to connect the dots. The church has a lot to answer for,
Tiga said solemnly, meeting her eyes again.
And we're going to make them pay. For breaking your faith, and for everything else they've done. To us and to the world. You were saying something about Bando.
Ryu asked curtly.
Oh yeah.
Tiga blinked before turning his attention back to the map.
Anyways, one of the demons we hauled in for questioning eventually spilled that Bando is more than meets the eye. It's actually second only to Evray in the conspiracy. There's apparently a massive basement full of prison cells and torture chambers. Funny that you mentioned paladins, since our guy also claimed that was where those who the demons managed to corrupt spent most of their time. The Dark Paladins, he called them. So we might end up going up against a lot of paladins here, hey.
Sten made a face before shrugging.
We've all seen worse odds. And if that's the case, maybe my mom really is there,
Ran said quietly.
Let's hope so,
Cat agreed.
Let me guess. You figure the guy in charge will know something about Evray. We know he will.
Tiga scowled.
Everything we've managed to dig up points to this guy being one of the conspiracy's top men.
He slapped a sketch portrait on the table, one that was all too familiar to them.
Father Nicholas Manson. Priest of Saint Eva for more than 60 years. Personal friend of the archpriest. Career shitbag. Manson,
Ryu growled, as several others on the team muttered various uncomplimentary words.
Yeah, he's in on it up to his stinking neck, alright. If you want a target, you couldn't have picked a better one. Take it you've met him before.
Don raised an eyebrow.
You could say that, yes,
Nina agreed, eyes cold with wrath. It had been Father Manson who had been behind everything that had gone horribly wrong in Windia, poisoning her father and driving her little sister to give up her life and become the Great Bird, before fleeing the country.
A job in my homeland. He managed to slip through our fingers, but not without doing a great deal of damage. We'll have to be very careful with him, he's a demon lord. We've handled our share of demons before too,
Pete boasted.
We know how to handle them. Trust us, there's a big difference between a demon and a demon lord,
Ryu assured them.
They can die, just like anything else, but... Well, I guess you'll see for yourselves when we take Manson on. Just don't give him an inch of leeway. We try not to do that in general,
Tiga told him calmly, smiling slightly, before glancing back at the map.
Anyways, Bando itself isn't exactly a fortress, above ground. The trick is going to be catching them off guard. We'll want to take as many of their forces out in the initial strike as possible. Chip went and scouted ahead a couple weeks ago, managed to get right outside without getting spotted. He'll be able to warp us right onto their front door, so we can charge right in and get down to work before they've got time to ask who's there. Taking nearly 20 guys is a bit out of my league, though,
Chip added.
I can manage a dozen or so, but any more than that and I'm out of luck, so you guys are going to have to find your own ride. We've got our own ways of dropping in out of the blue,
Ryu assured them.
A surprise arrival isn't going to be a problem. Glad to hear it.
Tiga nodded.
Once we've got the upper levels secured, we can take our time rooting all the rats out of their nest. We're planning to hit them 2 days from now, at noon sharp. Sound good? We'll be there.
Ryu nodded.
Good.
Tiga finished off his ale, then stood up.
Now that that's out of the way, there's something else I need to say. Here it comes,
Max muttered.
Just a second here.
Ryu's eyes narrowed.
Maybe there's something I should say, too. Hear me out.
Tiga replied, staring at Cat.
Cat. Ever since I met you, I haven't been able to think about anything else. I know it was just a day ago, but I can already tell, this isn't going to go away. I can't get you out of my head. This is out of line, and normally, I wouldn't even consider it, but it's driving me crazy. I have to ask. It's the only way. What are you saying, Lee?
She demanded, confused. She wasn't sure what he was up to, but it didn't sound like he was asking her out.
Get to the point. All right.
He took a deep breath, stood up straight, and closed his eyes for a moment before meeting hers.
Catch on. Will you marry me?
Every single jaw in the room except for his hung open.
Was Tsum Holly?
Sten demanded after a few seconds of total silence.
Eats Wu-Fu.
Jean added.
Chief.
Don asked slowly.
Are you feeling all right? You hit your head or something? Never better, Don,
Tiga assured him.
I've never felt like this before, but I already know. I want this. I want you, Cat. I want you to spend the rest of your life with me. I've got more in common with you than anybody I've ever met, and not just because we're of the same clan. We were meant for each other. And you know this how?
Ryu replied, no longer calm or friendly.
Look, Lee. I tried to be professional about this at first, but since that's obviously not the way we're doing this, I've got some news for you. Cat's not on the market.
Reaching over, he put an arm around her shoulders, and she leaned against him.
What he said,
she said quietly, and even that took a great deal of effort. She hadn't been exaggerating when she had said lying didn't come naturally to her. Part of her inherent dislike for dishonesty came from her self-awareness of her own inability to do so convincingly.
Sorry, Tiga. I'm already taken. Battison.
Tiga's eyes widened.
You and him? Seriously? I could have sworn it was Winfrey.
Nina winced, but didn't say anything.
I gotta admit, I was thinking the same thing,
Goof muttered, and a couple of the other renegades murmured agreement as well.
Something's not adding up here,
Tiga decided, eyes narrowing.
And I don't like that. I might not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I don't appreciate being taken for a fool, either. When you say you're taken, just how much are we talking here? It's not a question of how much,
Ryu said, taking his arm from Kat and standing up.
She's not available. End of discussion. It's not that simple,
Tiga replied, anger entering his own voice now, as the two of them stared each other down across the table.
You've told them, haven't you, Kat? About clan law. I've told my boys, and I bet you've done the same. Oh, shit, I forgot about that.
Pete blurted out, and the rest of the renegades all made similar noises of surprise.
Yeah, she told us,
Rand admitted, crossing his arms.
So what? She's still taken. Is she?
Tiga muttered, glancing at Kat again, and she suddenly realized that he knew, somehow.
I'm not too sure about that. Tell me, Kat. Is it true? Are you and Ryu more than just friends? We.
She licked her lips nervously, trying to get up the nerve to agree, even though it was false. Looking around the room, at the faces of her team, she saw encouragement on all of them, until she got to Nina's. As soon as her eyes met the princesses, and she saw the despair hidden deep within them, all her willpower drained away as if sucked out by magic. It was irrational and stupid and it would ruin everything, but all the same. She couldn't do it.
No,
she whispered, hanging her head.
Maybe someday. But right now. We're friends. That's all. Oh, my,
Spar murmured.
Thought so.
Tiga nodded calmly.
I didn't want to put it on that basis, but clan law is clan law. Shit. This is a real mess.
He raised a hand to his chin thoughtfully, as his tail began to lash, and after a moment, he nodded.
Okay. I've got an idea. It's not a good idea, and I'll admit, I'm probably biased, but it's all I can think of. Let's hear it,
Ryu told him dubiously.
Let me ask you a question, first,
Tiga replied.
Just so I know this makes sense. Well, it's more like two questions, one for you and one for her, but let's start with you. If you and Kat had an argument over something, say, something to do with group policy, and no matter how you went at it, you weren't going to agree, how would you settle it? Hey.
Kat blinked.
I'd back down. He's the boss. Yeah, but what if it was something you couldn't back down on?
Tiga pressed her.
Something important. These guys are loyal to me, but they've all got personal shit I don't try and push them on, because I'm smarter than that. What if it came up? We'd fight,
Ryu answered.
We've done it before. Before she joined up. And if she beat me, I'd be the one backing down. Thought so.
Tiga nodded briskly before glancing at Kat again, his gaze and his voice softening.
Question 2. Kat. I don't know how you and Ryu met, or how he talked you into joining up, but if it had been me, instead of him, would you have said no? What kind of question is that?
Bao asked, frowning.
An important one,
Tiga told him.
Until you started up with that bullshit you were trying to sell me, that's what I thought this was. I figured Ryu was just making sure I didn't try to steal her from you guys. That's why I admitted I was being out of line. But this is a special case. That's why I have to know. Would it really be so different, being one of us?
Kat closed her eyes, thinking back to when she had met Ryu in Corsair, and why she had followed him away from there.
Maybe. I'm not sure, but I can't say no. Maybe I would have. Then I know how we can settle this.
Tiga nodded slowly.
It's old-fashioned, and it's got some pretty unpleasant implications, but we all know each other by now. Even if we're going head-to-head on this score, nobody here's an asshole. It's not like I'm asking you to sleep with me right away or anything, I respect you too much for that. Trust me, that's the only thing that's keeping me from changing my mind about you.
Ryu slowly nodded.
Let me guess. You and me. One-on-one. Bingo.
Tiga crossed his arms.
You win, we'll go along with this con of yours, even if it means putting my neck on the line. I win, Kat joins up with the renegades. Are you freaking kidding me?
Dees demanded.
That's preposterous. And she's supposed to just sit back and watch.
Sten agreed.
Ridiculous. There's got to be a better way of doing this. I win, you let this go.
Ryu asked slowly.
Even if it means trusting us to make sure word doesn't get out to the clan elders. Yeah.
Tiga nodded.
Like I said, we're all friends here, or at least we were before this came up. I'm hoping we can be again once it's settled. Yeah, I'd do that. Then let me add another condition,
Ryu continued.
Expand on that a little. No matter what happens in this duel, no matter what either of us does, it doesn't leave this canyon. Nobody here speaks a word of what they see, until their dying day. You guys willing to agree to that? I'll swear to it,
Tiga promised.
Guys. You know we're with you, boss,
Don told him, and the others all nodded as well.
Cat.
Ryu asked softly.
I'm not going to agree to this if you don't want me to. It's your call. What are you?
She started to say, then trailed off as the light dawned, and she realized what he was planning. There was only one thing he could be referring to, when he had added the stipulation, his dragon transformations. Even without them, though, she realized that she trusted him to win. He had never actually lost a fight, alone or with them backing him up, and she couldn't see him ever doing so, even if she knew he was just as mortal as anybody. After a moment more, she slowly nodded.
Yeah. All right. It's a deal. Let's do this at sundown, then,
Tiga decided.
Give us both time to get ready. Done.
Ryu stuck out his hand once more, and Tiga clasped it, but their eyes held an altogether different emotion than every time they had before.
See you then.
Power. We still need more of your power. God still needs more of your power. Give your soul to God. Pray to God. Praise God. Give your heart and mind to God. You are becoming God's power.
Buddy.
Bo's voice jerked Ryu from his nap, as he knocked on the door.
You in there? Yeah,
Ryu called back, sitting up. He had been on his back on the bed.
Just resting my eyes for a bit.
He had made sure his sword and armor were both in perfect condition, picked up a few backup measures from Hans's general store, and had dinner without drinking, which left only the matter of his lack of sleep the previous night.
Want to make sure you're all rested up for this, hey?
Bao joked, opening the door. It hadn't been locked.
Guess that makes enough sense.
Walking over to Ryu's desk, he pulled the chair out and sat down in it, looking worried.
Speaking of which, I gotta ask. Are you sure about this, buddy? Something about this whole thing just doesn't sit well with me. I'm not exactly thrilled about it myself,
Ryu admitted, swinging his legs over the side of the bed.
As much as I actually kind of want to break Lee's face right now, this isn't the way I like to fight. Especially not with Cat at stake.
He shook his head slowly.
But it is a solution. And if Cat's willing to trust me with that, I'm not going to let her down. Never said you were, buddy.
Bao shook his head, smiling briefly.
Besides, I kinda want to see you break that jerk's face, myself.
He dropped the smile then, meeting his eyes.
That's not what I really wanted to talk about. Even after you win. This situation is getting out of hand, buddy. Between you and the girls. I know.
Ryu looked down at his feet.
I never should have let it get like this in the first place, but now that I have. Maybe, maybe not.
Bao brushed past that.
Here and now, though. It's hurting them, buddy. Every day that you don't choose, it hurts them both a little more, thinking about what'll happen if you choose the other one. No offense, but I'm kind of surprised one of them hasn't just made the hard call and dumped you first. I'd probably deserve it,
Ryu admitted, chuckling slightly.
I don't think they're going to, though. Which doesn't excuse my indecision. No, it doesn't,
Bao agreed bluntly.
You're going to have to grow up eventually, buddy, and that means learning to make decisions, even if you don't like it. Sometimes you just gotta do it, no matter how much you don't want to. That's what growing up means. This, coming from you.
Ryu joked half-heartedly.
Since when are you Mr. Responsibility? I've been doing some thinking of my own,
Bao told him seriously.
Once we're out of all this destiny bullshit, and the demons are all dead, assuming that everything's still going well between us. I'm going to ask Sylvia to marry me. Whoa.
Ryu slowly smiled.
Well, okay then. You are officially more mature than I am. You sure? Yeah.
Bao nodded slowly.
I am. I think she'll say yes. I think so, too.
Ryu raised his fist in the air, and Bao bumped his against it.
Good for you, man. Now that you bring that up, though, Kat said the same thing to me, earlier today. I told her once we were done with the destiny bullshit, I thought I'd be able to do it. To decide, I mean. Make sure to hold me to that, will you? Deal.
Bao agreed.
As soon as we're finished, you make up your mind. No more excuses, at that point. As for today.
He smiled again, more vicious looking than his normal cheerfulness.
Kick his ass. Lawton knows he's got it coming. That's what I had in mind.
Ryu stood up and glanced out the window, at the night sky.
Sun will be setting over in Scotland soon. We should head over. That still bugs me, you know.
Bao commented as they left the room.
Changing time zones on a moment's notice. It's weird. Not to mention inconvenient. You'll live,
Ryu told him, walking down the stairs. The rest of the team were all waiting for them in the meeting room, various expressions on their face ranging from anger to trust to disgust to sadness. Looking from one to the other, he saved Kat's for last. She met his eyes calmly, without hesitation, and he nodded slightly.
All right, people. I'm not going to pretend this is anything but screwed up, because it's not. Which is to say, it is screwed up. But it's the best way out of this mess, and we're not exactly loaded down with options here. And if he wins?
Sten suggested.
The breath of spirit's no joke, Chief. What happens if Tiga's is even stronger than Kat's, and he beats you? I'm not going to let that happen,
Ryu told him, shaking his head.
No matter what. Everybody ready? And waiting,
Spar replied coolly.
Shall we go, then? Let's,
he said, and they left the building before warping back over to Scotland once more. As he had predicted, the sun was almost at the horizon, and the sky was just starting to turn orange. The renegades were all gathered outside, leaning against walls or sitting on roofs. With a nod from Ryu, his team spread out and began taking up similar positions as he and Kat walked forward towards Tiga, who was sitting on a rock.
You ready for this?
The Warren clansmen asked as they approached.
More than.
Ryu smiled coldly.
Nothing personal. Same here.
He stood up and grinned, sharp teeth glinting.
You can still back out, you know. You are just friends, right? Not happening.
Ryu slowly shook his head. He knew it was only trash talk, bravado meant to unnerve him, but all the same, that one comment had ignited his rage anew.
You're going down, Lee. All there is to it. Then I guess there's no point in waiting any longer.
Tiga turned his glance to Kat then.
Sorry it had to be this way, Kat. But I need you to at least give me a chance. If this is the only way to do that.
He shrugged.
We'll see,
she replied quietly. For a moment, Ryu thought she was going to say something more to him, but then she turned and walked away to lean against a wall next to Jasmine.
Well.
Tiga said, so quiet that Ryu barely heard him.
Come on. Let's go. Wish granted.
Drawing his sword, Ryu immediately slashed out at Tiga's waist in the same motion, only for the Warren clansman to catch the blade in one hand, clawed fingers bracing the blade a hair's breadth from his palm. Before Ryu could react, his other hand came up, tearing into his plate mail like it was paper and stabbing into his chest in 5 places with enough force to send him flying off his feet onto his back.
And if he wins?
Sten's question came back to him as he landed, and he realized far too late just how stupid he had been, and what the horrible consequences of his arrogance could be. Rolling back to his feet, he tried to cut at Tiga's shoulder next, but the larger man sidestepped it easily before dropping down and kicking. Jumping it, Ryu saw Tiga's grin and raised his other arm to block his hand, only to howl as he crushed it, flesh and bone. Whirling around, he flipped Ryu overhead and slammed him into the dirt.
Come on, don't tell me this is all you've got.
Tiga said cockily, letting go and stepping back, tail lashing behind him.
You were pretty confident back there. You've got some sort of trump card, don't you? Something you're relying on in case you're out of options. Well, I hate to break it to you, but you're already outmatched. Whatever it is, you had better bring it out, or else this'll be over before I even have time to work up the sweat. Yeah, okay.
Gritting his teeth, Ryu stood back up, resisting the urge to drop his sword and clutch his broken hand.
Remember, though. Nobody breathes a word of this.
Reaching inside of him, he summoned up the secret legacy of his dragon clan blood, the breath of fire, and transformed on the spot. Skin to scales, hands and feet to claws, hair to horns, his wings spread and his tail thrashed as he loomed before the now stunned Tika, whose eyes had widened gratifyingly, and belched a massive fireball that engulfed the Warren clansman completely. A moment later, he reverted. Due to the weakening of the breath of fire caused by breeding with the Wing clan, he could only remain in his transformed state for a few devastating moments at a time. As the renegades howled in shock and protest, he landed on his feet, back in his human form once more, sword in hand.
Well,
he called towards the blaze.
How's that for a trump card, hey, Lee? Pretty damn good, I gotta say,
Tika replied, walking forth from the flames, and Ryu's heart almost stopped. He was actually on fire, fur blazing, but he continued striding forward as if it were only an illusion. Once he was clear of the main blaze, he paused before suddenly spinning like a top, extinguishing himself instantly.
Wasn't expecting that,
he continued, pausing for a moment far enough away that neither of them would be able to attack without moving closer.
Dragon Clan, hey? I can see why you wouldn't want that getting out. Why'd you turn back, though? You only held onto it for a moment.
He grinned again, golden eyes glinting, backlit by the fire.
Or is it that you had to turn back?
Ryu didn't respond verbally, instead, he charged, swinging his sword again. With a sigh, Tika made to catch it again, only for Ryu to halt the swing and drive the pommel towards the larger man's chin. Surprised, Tika's head snapped back, and Ryu tried following up with a punch from his left hand, remembering too later that it was already broken. The blow landed, but it was feeble, probably hurting himself with the movement more than it did Tika. Hissing, he tried a light cut, but Tika was already moving again, bringing a leg up to kick him in the side and send him flying. Rolling on the ground, he realized his mail had been dented inwards, enough that it was actually cutting into his side now. Breathing heavily, he forced himself back to his feet just in time to parry Tika's next attack with his sword. Before the Warren clansman could use his other hand, he charged, shoulders down. Ramming Tika, he heard the breath whoosh out of his opponent, and felt a surge of elation at finally getting an edge over him. Without waiting a moment, he swept Tika's feet out from under him and raised his sword in an overhead swing as he fell. As he brought it down, however, he saw Tika's hands slash together in an odd manner, forming an X across his chest. A blazing red blast of energy slammed into his chest, tearing into his plate mail even further and blowing him away.
Man, oh man,
he heard Tika say as he lay there, groaning.
Figures you would make me use my last resort too. You're better than you look, Battison. You too, Lee.
He wheezed, fighting his body's demands to just lie down and bleed. Gritting his teeth, he got back up again, fumbling at a pouch on his belt. Meeting Tika's eyes, he spat blood to the side before grinning as he realized something. Despite how angry he was at him for forcing it to this, despite how angry he was at himself for falling for it, he couldn't quite bring himself to actually hate this man who was so much like him in so many ways.
We might as well just go with those, at this point. You gonna do it again?
Tika raised an eyebrow.
Way I heard it, using that knocked all your magical reserves out in one go. It does,
Ryu admitted, finally opening the pouch and plucking out what he had bought from Hans. Dried berries of the wise fruit, which restored magical power at the cost of physical health.
But I plan ahead.
Before Tika could react, he popped 3 of them into his mouth and swallowed, before crouching and heaving at the hideous taste, so foul it actually hurt, 3 times as bad as ever before. Choking down the pain, he transformed again, even as another energy slash came his way. This time, he became a drake of ice, and the blast ricocheted off him harmlessly as he bathed Tika in freezing gas. When he reverted, he didn't bother waiting to see if Tika was down or not, he immediately went for the pouch again, pulling 3 more berries out. As fast as he was, before he could actually down them, another blast sent him flying in the dirt, knocking the fruit from his hand.
You don't let up, do you?
Tika said approvingly as Ryu's vision swam, dark spots interspersed with bright flashes, he couldn't even tell what direction the Warren clansman was approaching from anymore.
Not even for a moment. Too bad for you that I don't either. I noticed,
Ryu muttered, managing to get another handful of wise fruit and stuff them in his mouth. Instantly, he vomited painfully, barely managing to raise himself on hands and knees as he did so. Retching, he felt the magic surge through him once more all the same, and with a phenomenal effort, got back to his feet one more time. Swaying on them, almost falling over backwards, he glared at Tika's approaching form and transformed a third and final time, into a drake of thunder. Rising, he screamed his defiance and blasted him with lightning. And then his strength drained away as he transformed back, and he fell towards the charred, blasted, but still standing Warren clansman's claws. Sorry, Tika said quietly as he brought his sword down in one final, desperate swing, and was met with his rising claws. Sword and armor and bones all shattered, as his vision darkened, and the last thing he saw was Kat's horrified face before it all slipped away.
How's he doing?
Bao asked Kay Sindel, the town doctor, as she turned away from Ryu. They had healed him and brought him back home before waking her, but even after they had deposited him in his own bed, he had shown no signs of waking. Ever since they had called Kay up, he had sat in the room's only chair, watching intently. He wasn't going to let his buddy out of his sight until he woke up, no matter how long it took.
You did a good job,
Kay said calmly, meeting his eyes with a tired smile.
He'll be fine. There'll be some residual damage, of course, and he'll have those scars for a long time, but it won't be debilitating in any way. I'm impressed, actually. Either you and Rand are truly phenomenal in the art of healing magic, or he's much more resilient than most young men. Let's chalk that one up to a little of each, then,
Bao said smoothly. In truth, he figured it was probably more the latter than the former, but even though all the townsfolk knew about his best friend's heritage by now, it still wasn't something he felt comfortable talking about.
Sorry for waking you up this early, but we were pretty worried about him. Don't worry about it.
She smiled slightly.
It's my duty as a doctor to be ready to help people at all hours, and I can tell why you would be, even if you had him healed before calling me over. What exactly was it that he picked a fight with, anyways? This might be naive of me, but... well, until now, I just couldn't see him losing to anybody. Don't think any of us could,
Bao agreed glumly.
That was kind of the problem.
He shook his head.
Leader of another gang of mercs. A Warren clansman. Ooh.
Kay winced.
That would do it, all right.
She frowned slightly.
I'm surprised Kat wasn't there with you knocking down my door. Come to think of it, she wasn't even with you, was she? Is she all right? Yeah.
Bao forced himself to lie, remembering what had happened after Ryu had gone down. Closing his eyes, he continued.
Kat's not gonna be around for a while, I'm afraid. What?
Kay blurted, shocked.
Where is she? What happened? She's fine, Bao
assured her, hating himself more with every false word.
She's just got something to take care of by herself for a while. She'll be back. All right,
Kay said, smiling again.
Group business, right? You can't talk about it. I understand. Everybody in town knows how that goes.
Walking away from Ryu, she paused in the doorway.
He's the only one, then? Nobody else is hurt. Not even a scratch.
Bao smiled slightly.
Believe it or not, that was the only fight any of us had all day. Will wonders never cease?
She joked.
Well then, I'll be getting back to sleep. May Saint Eva guide your path. See you,
Bao replied, barely managing to stop himself from replying hotly with what he thought of Saint Eva these days. Sighing, he watched her leave, then turned back to see that Ryu's eyes had opened.
Hey, buddy. Feeling okay? I lost,
Ryu said calmly, staring up at the ceiling.
Didn't I? Yeah,
Bao admitted.
You did. What happened?
Ryu didn't look at him.
After I went down. The renegades started cheering, of course,
Bao grumbled.
Bunch of thugs. Soon as they did, though, Tika yelled at them to knock it off. Said this wasn't something anybody should be proud of. Pretty sure that was the only thing that kept Sten from taking the asshole out. I was kind of tempted to put a bolt through his skull myself. And Kat?
Ryu asked quietly.
See, that's the thing,
Bao continued, trying to stall as long as possible.
As soon as Lee said that, she started howling, and everybody turns to look at her. And she's using magic, buddy. Black magic, and a lot of it, all at once. Everybody had to get out of the way real fast, or else we'd all have been blown away. Soon as it was over, she nearly passed out. Deez and Nina think that she somehow managed to use her body's magical stores without any training to give it shape or form. Wild magic, kind of like that time.
Bao, Ryu cut him off, finally meeting his eyes. She. Bao lowered his head.
She's gone, buddy. I'm sorry. She stayed with them. I think Tika was gonna say something, but she cut him off. Told him. And us. That a deal was a deal. Said something to Nina that made her turn white. Didn't hear what it was.
He handed Ryu the envelope she had given him before they'd left.
Went into the barn and wrote this before we left. Told me to give it to you.
Ryu didn't say another word then, he simply opened the envelope and read the piece of paper inside. A moment later, he climbed out of bed and began walking out, dropping the note on the floor.
Hey, hold on, buddy.
Bao yelped, starting to stand as he glanced down at the paper. I love you. Cat.
Oh, shit,
he whispered, as Ryu continued to calmly walk out and down the stairs. By the time he caught up with him, he was already outside, and walking towards the statue of Laden. For a moment, Bao started to reach out towards him, then stopped as Ryu put his shoulder against the statue and began to push with everything he had. This went on for several minutes, during which the statue refused to budge, until he finally slipped and fell forward onto his face.
I'm sorry, my friend,
Laden said sympathetically.
This wasn't something I foresaw.
Ryu didn't respond, and when Bao reached down to help him up, he ignored that as well. Standing again, he began walking away.
Buddy?
Bao asked quietly.
I'm going to go ask McLean if he knows any good fishing spots about 1,000,000 miles away from anything,
Ryu said, almost too quiet to be heard.
Don't follow me. Yeah, okay,
Bao agreed, just as softly.
See you.
Looking around to make sure that there was nobody else out on the street this early, he sat down next to the statue.
You took that pretty well. What he was trying, I mean. Believe me, I've seen worse,
Laden said without a trace of humor.
If he had really wanted to destroy it, he'd have transformed. That would have done it, even if no amount of physical strength would. I'd say that's good to know, but I'm actually kind of hoping it's never relevant.
Bao shook his head slowly.
You really didn't see this coming? At all? No, I didn't,
Laden repeated.
Tigoli is an outside factor. A wild card. By the time I realized what part he would play in your destiny, it was too late. There are 2 others not of your number who will help you on your journey as well, and already have, their names were known to me long ago. But Tika? No. I've got a couple theories as to who they might be, but that's a story for another day,
Bao said, frowning as he recalled everybody who had helped the group in the past. Aside from known agents of Laden and heroes from the last generation, 2 names did in fact stand out more than anybody else.
Right now, I'm more concerned with something Dee said once. Something about us. Stop me if I get anything wrong, but the way I understand it, aside from Nero, all 9 of us were destined to come together against the demons, right? That's right,
Laden agreed.
Ryu's name was written in the stars long ago, as was Nina's, and of course Dee's, but so were those of all your number. You, and Kat, and all the others. All of you are necessary to prevent the demon's triumph. Then we're going to need her,
Bao reasoned, forcing himself to keep his voice calm.
Kat. We're not going to be able to do this without her. 2 for 2,
Laden said reassuringly.
Your hopes will be validated, Bao. She will return to you, in time. I am not sure how, or why, but this problem will pass. She'll come back to you, and to Ryu. Good.
Bao slowly nodded.
She's like a sister to me, you know? I'm just surprised nobody's made a cats and dogs joke yet. Not that there's going to be much joking about this.
Standing up, he turned back towards the door.
Alright, then. Now it's just a matter of keeping the team from falling apart until she does. That's my job. You'll do fine,
Laden told him.
I know you can do it. It's what I'm here for,
Bao replied. As he walked inside, he realized that he had finally, completely come to accept his position as the second in command of the group, and everything that implied. Despite everything else that was going so horribly wrong, it felt kind of nice. The renegades had built a campfire. Apparently, they did so every night in the same fire pit, in the center of Cotland. They'd had their dinner out there, a freshly caught wild boar, along with more ale. There was some decidedly off-key singing, a little friendly brawling, and general camaraderie all around. Tika wasn't present, claiming to be busy working on the plan for the attack on Bando, and neither was Patty, apparently still asleep. Kat didn't take part in any of it. It had been a long time since her dinner on the other side of the world, but she wasn't hungry, and she didn't want anything to drink either, both unprecedented. She simply sat against the wall of one of their buildings, knees up under her chin and arms around her legs, watching them carouse. Several times, some of the renegades bellowed requests for her to come join the fun, but she simply shook her head, saying nothing. Eventually, they began leaving one by one, heading indoors to get some sleep. Only when Jasmine alone remained at the campfire did Cat approach, resuming her previous position once she was much closer, and lowering her head into her arms so that she couldn't see her surroundings. That way, she could almost pretend that she was still back in her own home, and the campfire was there instead. Almost.
It won't last,
the other woman said after a few minutes, her voice gruff and growling. She had been tending the fire when Cat had walked over, and hadn't looked at her, which she had appreciated.
It never does. Just wait a few weeks, maybe a month. Sooner or later some other girl'll catch his eye, and he'll tell you he's changed his mind. Never fails. How many times has he asked them to marry him?
Cat replied after a few moments, hating the sound of her own voice. It didn't sound at all like her, not even close. She never sounded like that, hadn't since she was 5, and she had never wanted to again.
Well, okay, that's new,
Jasmine admitted.
But I'm pretty sure that's just because of the clan thing. He's really a decent guy, you know. We wouldn't follow him if he wasn't. Once he gets over you, he'll agree to pretend this never happened. Just like your boss being a dragon clansman. We know how to keep a secret.
When Cat didn't say anything else this time, she remained quiet as well for a bit before speaking again.
I'll leave some dinner out here for you in case you want it later. See you tomorrow.
Setting a plate and mug down by the fire, she left as well. Cat kept her head down, ignoring it, even when she heard more footsteps approaching, followed by a familiar voice.
Oh, it's you,
Patty said grumpily.
What are you still doing here? Don't tell me you stooges are going to be sticking around the whole time until the attack on Bendo. No,
Cat replied. Normally, she'd have shot something equally derogatory back, but tonight she just didn't feel up to it, not even for the irritating thief.
Just me. Guess that's something.
Patty muttered.
Hey, you gonna eat that? Go ahead.
She kept her head down.
No taking it back, then.
She sat down and began noisily scarfing it. Cat did her best to ignore her at first, but sure enough, it wasn't long before she started up again.
So what's the deal? How come you're sticking around without the rest of your crew? I quit,
Cat said quietly, and a moment later, she heard Patty drop her plate.
Shit.
She snapped.
Now look, you made me spill my dinner. It'll taste like dirt now. Thanks a bunch. Now cut the crap. What's the real reason? I just told you,
Cat replied, still not looking at her.
I'm joining the Renegades instead. That's all there is to it. Bull,
Patty said flatly.
Look, I don't like any of you. You're all a pain in the ass that won't go away. But one thing even I have to admit is that you're good to each other. Hell, you're practically one big happy family, and all that garbage. You would take a sword through the gut before you ditched the rest of them. And you're saying you just up and quit, and joined the Renegades? Yeah, sure. Tell me another one. It wasn't my idea,
Cat muttered, slightly surprised that she still felt absolutely no anger.
Okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Patty paused to take a drink of ale.
So. If it wasn't your idea, then why are you doing it? Clan law,
Cat said flatly.
Me and Tika have to get married. That's not funny,
Patty replied after another moment, all trace of her usual sarcasm gone now.
You suck at telling jokes, Sean. Do I look like I'm laughing, Smith?
Cat finally raised her head to look at her. The thief's face was serious in a way she had only been when talking about demons before.
It's not a joke. He's dead.
Patty's eyes went flat.
I don't care how tough he is, I'll strangle him in his sleep. Don't.
Cat put her head back down.
Like I said, it's clan law. Sure, he's not exactly broken up about it, but it's not his fault. Fine,
Patty said before chugging the rest of the mug in one go, by the sounds of it, and standing up.
But I'll find some way to fix this.
Without waiting for a response, she marched off again, leaving Cat alone once more. Just when she thought she was starting to drift off to sleep, however, she heard footsteps approaching again.
Hey,
Tika said, sitting down next to her.
You okay? Should I be?
She replied quietly, trying to sort out just how she felt about him now. It was complicated, and she wasn't used to that, not when it came to her emotions.
I guess not.
Tika sighed.
Still, I was hoping. Well, never mind that.
He shifted awkwardly before continuing.
You know we've got bunks inside. There's a couple of extras, so you can go ahead and take one. I'm not expecting you to share mine or anything. I'll sleep out here,
she replied, tail twitching.
Thanks anyways. No problem.
Tika was silent for a little while then before he spoke again.
Do you hate me? For doing this? Not really.
She raised her head again to look at him, but couldn't force herself to smile.
I get where you're coming from. Like I said, maybe if things were different, I'd have been into this just as much as you are. It's just.
She let it trail off.
You're not just saying that, are you?
Tika asked her quietly.
I'm a big boy, Cat. You don't have to worry about hurting my feelings or whatever. Even I can figure that one out.
She finally managed to smile, just a little.
Look, Tika. You're a great guy. You're strong, you're tough, you don't back down from anything. You love to fight just as much as I do, and nothing much gets you down for long. Maybe you're not the sharpest sword in the armory, but hey, neither am I. You're easy on the eyes, and we're in the same line of work. I like you, okay. Then what's the problem?
Tika replied, looking confused.
That's how I feel about you, Cat. Yeah, you're a babe, but all that aside. You get it. You get me, Cat, like nobody else ever has. That's why I want to marry you. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get married, but when I saw you, I knew you were the one. We've got so much in common, it can't just be a coincidence. We were meant for each other. And you just said you feel the same way I do, right? Tika.
Cat met his eyes, and spent a moment choosing her words carefully before she spoke, more than she ever had before.
I said I like you, and that's true. But I don't love you. Liking somebody isn't the same as loving them. I don't get it,
Tika replied after a long moment, staring back at her.
I'm trying, but I just don't understand. That's okay.
Cat lowered her head once more.
I don't either. Well, if you say so,
Tika said quietly, though she could tell he was still confused. When he spoke next, however, his voice had a more business-like tone to it.
I talked with Bao a little, after the fight. He said they're still in when we storm Bando, so we're gonna go ahead with the plan and attack 2 days from now at noon. You gonna be up for that? Of course I am,
she replied, her voice still quiet.
I'm not giving up until every last one of those bastards is dead. That's what I like to hear.
Tika chuckled, sounding happier now.
If you fight by my side, I'm not afraid of anything, Cat. No matter what it is, we can take it down. Together. I'll see you in the morning.
He walked away then, and left her alone by the campfire.
Soon, we will leave you, child. No, don't cry. It is our way, the way of our people, the Warren. We are a solitary people, and you must learn to live alone. You are strong. We have already taught you how to survive, and so you will. But before then, there are things you must know about the Warren, for we are different from other people. They are many, and we are few. This is the way it always has been, and this is the way it always will be. Now listen, and I will tell you the secrets of our people, the laws that are ours, and ours alone. Alone,
she whispered to herself, as a cold wind blew from the south, and she shivered, curling up tighter and edging closer to the campfire.
Again. I thought I'd never have to be alone again.
For some stupid reason, her cheeks were wet. Wild thing, I think I love you.